What a modern home is made of is really dependent upon where you want to build your home. And in this video, we're going to go over some of the more common options that folks are using to build a modern home. So the first obviously is wood framing. So now one thing that is unique to a modern home is it having clean lines, very minimalistic. And one of the things that you don't want to do is put in cheap lumber, because what it does is it makes your walls really wavy, uneven, and you don't want that in a modern home. A solution for doing wood framing for a modern home is actually, it's called a finger joint stud. So you can get them in 2x6s, 2x4s. It's scrap material that's used and finger jointed together to create really strong and really straight walls. This is by far the most cost-effective way to get a straight wall without doing anything else on this list. Now, something to keep in mind with wood framing is if you don't buy good lumber, you're going to, one, you'll save money on the deal, maybe, but two, you're actually going to increase the cost of your drywall, because now your drywall guy has to accommodate for the lumber that is crooked, right? So there's a lot more mud, a lot more sanding, a lot more work involved on that side. So if you start with a good foundation, everything else just rolls smoothly. The second option for building a modern home is steel stud framing. Steel stud is used in commercial applications and creates pretty much flawless walls. With that, it is very expensive, and the labor to install it is also pretty expensive. Not to mention, you still have to account for the sheathing and everything else that goes into the build of your home. You may see a difference in price between steel stud and wood stud. However, you have to remember that there's so many other things involved with steel stud that actually make it more expensive than traditional lumber. A couple of things would be your electrical and your plumbing could get a little bit more expensive because steel stud is a unique product and requires unique tools to drill holes through. On a steel stud, they have preset holes already in them to run your utilities, but sometimes you may need something in a unique spot and it's a little bit more work to get it there with steel stud. The third option is concrete blocks or CMUs. This is perfect material for building a modern home in a more tropical or a more humid environment. And this is especially true if you're in an area where it's prone to either termites or hurricanes. The fourth option is insulating concrete forms or ICF blocks. Essentially, it's foam blocks that stack together like Lego pieces, and then you fill them with concrete. Now, this does a couple of things. It completely insulates the house from the elements outside. It also acts as a sound barrier from anything outside. So you'd have a nice, climate-controlled, very quiet home if you're doing it with ICF blocks. Now, with all of these structural elements, one thing that you're going to want to consider is doing level 5 drywall. This keeps your walls perfectly straight, and it's an absolute must for a modern home. The reason being is if your walls aren't straight or you've got waves in your drywall, with a modern home you typically don't do orange peel or knockdown for texture. It's usually a skim coat, and when you have a skim coat on the drywall, you can see every single imperfection. If you've got long hallways or big living rooms, you can see every single imperfection on that wall, where orange peel or knockdown texture hides all of that stuff. This is what tract homes use when they're building homes and they're just throwing these things together. It's an easy way to hide imperfection. And if your walls are not smooth or perfect or straight or plumb, however you want to call it, if your walls aren't in good condition, it makes it really difficult for the cabinet guy to come in, especially with a modern home. You're doing frameless slab cabinets typically. There's no way to hide those imperfections like you would if you were just throwing up, tract home cabinets, and you can hide waves behind a cabinet with scribe molding. There is no such thing. So you want the walls as straight as possible, because you have to think of the end from the very beginning. You have to think these cabinets are going to be at the end of every single run, so these walls need to be absolutely perfect in order for there not to be any mishaps with the installation and to avoid a sloppy looking install. Some of the other things to consider when building a modern home is, what are the exterior materials going to be? So you can do brick, you can do glass, you can do metal siding, you can do composite siding. There's so many options for the exterior, but typically a modern home has very unique finishes on the outside that make it stand out from a traditional build. If you're going to incorporate stucco, for example, your stucco on a modern home is going to be a skim coat. You want it as smooth as possible. You don't want this to look like a tract home. Give each section of the exterior of your model home its own statement. Thanks so much for watching. This is Matthew Hamill with Bauteam. Do me a favor, like and subscribe and click that notification bell. And if you have any other questions on building a modern home, please leave them in the comments section below and we'll be happy to answer them as they come in. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one.